The more you read, the more things you will know. The more you learn, the more places you will go. A pleasant morning to our dear learners, live from O'Donnell High School. This is DWRR 94.5 FM Roger Way, reaching goals of education for the youth. I am Sir Jose N. Valiente, your teacher broadcaster today. Our MELT today composed a research report on a relevant social issue. I know that you are ready. Let's start. Now, this is an overview of parts of a research paper. We can see here that we have the abstract, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 5, the bibliography, and the appendices. Now, let's discuss the parts of a research paper one by one. It is my goal that after this program, you would be able to compose a research paper. Let's start. First one is the abstract. When we say abstract, an abstract is a short summary of your completed research. It is intended to describe your work without going into the great detail. Abstract should be self-contained and concise, explaining your work as briefly and clearly as possible. In chapter 1, we can see the introduction. An introduction is the first paragraph of a written research paper, or the first thing you say in an oral presentation, or the first thing people see, hear, or experience about your project. It has two parts. The first part, a general introduction to the topic you will be discussing, and your thesis statement. After the introduction, the statement of the problem, or what we call SOP. A research problem may be defined as an area of concern, a gap in the existing knowledge, or deviation in the norm or standard that points the need for further understanding and investigation. Although many problems turn out to have several solutions, the means to close the gap or connect the deviation. Difficulties arise where such means are either not obvious or are not immediately available. This then necessitates some research to reach a viable solution. The main purpose of the problem statement is to identify and explain the problem. This includes describing the existing environment where the problem occurs and what impacts it has on users, finances, and ancillary activities. Next is the significance of the study. It is a written statement that explains why your research was needed. It is a justification of the importance of your work and impact it has on your research field, its contribution to new knowledge, and how others will benefit from it. Next is the scope and the limitation. The scope details how in-depth your study is to explore the research question and the parameters in which it will operate in relation to the population and time frame. The delimitation of a study are the factors and variables not to be included in the investigation. Next, the definition of terms. When we say definition of terms, operational definition of terms refers to a detailed explanation of the technical terms and measurement used during the data collection. The only way to ensure that the data is consistent is by means of a detailed operational definition of terms. The operational definition of terms is included in the methods section. So this is the chapter 1, the introduction, statement of the problem, significance of the study, scope and delimitation, and the definition of terms. Now let's proceed to chapter 2, the review of related literature. It is a detailed review of existing literature related to the topic of a thesis or dissertation, or in your context, your research paper. Here, you discuss about knowledge and findings from existing literature relevant to your topic. If you find gaps or conflicts in existing literature, you can also discuss this in your review, and if applicable, how you plan to address these gaps or resolve these conflicts through your study. Under here, we could find also the related studies. Studies, foreign and local. Here also we can find the conceptual framework. Conceptual framework is an analytic tool that is used to get a comprehensive understanding of a phenomenon. It can be used in different fields of work and most commonly used to visually explain the key concepts or variables and the relationship between them that need to be studied. So that's the chapter 2, the related literature, related studies, foreign or local, and the conceptual framework. We are now at chapter 3, methods of study and sources of data. The first part under this is the research design. When we say research design, this describes the research mode, whether it is through experimental or quasi-experimental design, descriptive or survey research, historical research, qualitative research, ethnographic, etc., etc. After discussing your research design, you will now discuss research locale. Research locale discusses the place or setting of the study. It describes in brief the place where the study is conducted. Only important features which have the bearing on the present study are included. Shows the target population. Next is the respondents of the study. This describes the target population and the sample frame. It specifies the sampling technique used and how the sample size is determined. Then the research instruments. This explains the specific type of research instrument used such as checklist, questionnaire checklist, structured interview, teacher-made tests, standardized instruments which are adapted or borrowed with permission from the author or from other sources. The parts of the instrument should be explained and what bits of information are derived. Next is gathering data procedure. The definition of data gathering procedure is that it is the technique used to obtain the information used in your research to substantiate the claims made by a writer. The last part of chapter 3 is the statistical treatment. Statistical treatment explains how each statistical test is used in the treatment of data. If the research instrument included options which are scaled, explain how each scale is given the weight, its interval, and class limits. We are now at the chapter 4. Here is the presentation, analysis, and interpretation of data. We're going to discuss your findings of your research. The last part is the chapter 5, the summary of the findings, conclusions, and recommendations. In recommendation, you're going to give your suggested solution to the problem. Of course, don't forget to write your references or the bibliography. A bibliography is a list of all the sources you have, whether referenced or not, in the process of researching your work. In general, a bibliography should include the author's name, the title of the work, the names and location of the companies that publish your copies of the sources. Also include your appendix or appendices. When we say appendix, one item, appendices, more than one item. Contains information that is not essential to the essay or to your report or to your research that you have written but supports analysis and validates your conclusion. And that's the part of a research paper. Abstract, chapter 1. In chapter 1, we can see the introduction, statement of the problem, significance of the study, scope and delimitation, and of course the definition of terms. In chapter 2, we can see there the related literature, related studies, foreign and local, and the conceptual framework. In chapter 3, under that, the research design, research locale, respondents of the study, research instruments, gathering data procedures, statistical treatment. And in chapter 4, the presentation, analysis, and interpretation of data. In chapter 5, the summary of your findings, conclusion and recommendation. And after that, the bibliography and the appendices. Now for your output, compose a research report on a relevant social issue. You may choose one topic below. So, online games, wearing masks, online class, cigarette smoking, mental health, managing stress, radio-based instruction, and drinking alcohol. Again, this is Sir Jose Valiente, your host and radio teacher broadcaster. Do not forget, today a reader, tomorrow a leader. Odunel, do well. God bless.